Hey guys, it's FEAwesome1, and today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to tell you what I think the 5 hardest Zelda games are. Now, Zelda isn't the most difficult series, so of course most of the games aren't extremely difficult or impossible to beat, but whether it's due to enemies, puzzles, or both, each Zelda game has at least some challenging moments. Before I begin, please keep in mind that there are some games that I haven't played in a while or have only completed once, so I might have forgotten how difficult they are and left them off the list. If there's a game you feel should have been on here that wasn't, feel free to tell me politely in the comments. Maybe I can make a revised list someday. With that said, I'll begin the countdown. In terms of puzzles, A Link to the Past is pretty straightforward. Puzzle solving didn't really become a serious tradition until the next installment, Link's Awakening, but it's A Link to the Past's enemies that provide the real challenge. Most enemies, if not all, in the Dark World deal at least a heart of damage, often more. Due to the Super Nintendo's limitations, your movements are limited and it's hard to avoid being hit if you're getting up close and personal. When you first get to the Dark World, you don't have very many hearts or any defensive items, making avoiding damage even harder. Sure, the game gets a little easier as you get more hearts and items, and it's not too difficult to begin with, but if it's your first time playing, you're bound to die at least a few times. But in the end, beating the game isn't too much of a challenge, and it can be completed in a few days. Twilight Princess is actually pretty easy if you're looking at combat. Most enemies only deal half a heart of damage per hit, and it's easy to block attacks with your shield, but Twilight Princess's puzzles more than make up for that. Twilight Princess has some of the largest and most complex dungeons in the Zelda series. The Lakeba Temple is notorious for its difficulty and confusing layout, and the City in the Sky is bound to take anyone a long time. Each dungeon is packed with clever puzzles to solve, and most of them revolve around a central puzzle of some kind. So, although Twilight Princess is easy in the combat department, its puzzles are bound to make anyone scratch their head at least a few times, and even a hardcore gamer would be hard-pressed to beat it in less than a couple weeks. Majora's Mask is a difficult game all around. Its enemies deal a fair amount of damage from the moment you leave Clocktown. Its dungeons stand with Twilight Princess in terms of complexity, and the constant time limit makes it hard for you to progress. That was pretty much a perfect summary, but I'll elaborate. Zelda always gives players plenty to search for and discover, and Majora's Mask is no exception, but the time limit makes it hard to do that and beat a dungeon in the same go. As a result, some people, or at least 12-year-old me, will rush past all the secrets in the overworld in order to get to the nearest dungeon more quickly, meaning that they skip a lot of heart pieces and helpful items. My first time playing Majora's Mask, I only had 3 hearts when I did the Woodfall Temple, and that made Odawa a really hard boss. Even if you decide to go hunting for heart pieces and masks before attempting your next dungeon, you might have a hard time since many of them are so well hidden or require you to do long side quests. For example, the Cafe and Anju side quest takes the full 3 days that the game gives you, and it's very difficult to even find out what to do or where to go to complete it. Overall, Majora's Mask is one of those games where you almost have to look up a walkthrough a couple times, or more. If you played this game back when it first came out in the 80s and didn't use a guide, you have my full respect. Seriously, how did you do it? This game gives you no guidance. When you first create your save file and press start, you're smack in the middle of Hyrule Field with nothing but a rudimentary map to tell you where you are. You see a cave nearby and walk into it to retrieve your trusty wooden sword, and that's where the easiness ends. The game can't help but be limited since it came out so long ago, and that limitation makes it very difficult. Your only sword attack is a close-range little stab, and you can only move in 4 directions. That makes getting hit very easy, and enemies do a lot of damage. But that's not even the hardest part. The game gives you absolutely no clues as to where the next dungeon is or how to get there. It's all up to you to find it, but how are you supposed to know that playing your recorder on that one square of the map drains the lake? And how is anyone supposed to know that bombing that one random rock opens the way to level 9? Even when the game does attempt to give you hints, they're very vague and unclear. Does anybody know what Eastmost Peninsula is the secret means? The first game in the Legend of Zelda series was certainly not an easy one, but even it doesn't hold a candle to the next game on the list. I'm sure most of you knew what it was even before you clicked on this video. Ugh, this is the one Zelda game that I really just don't like. The Adventure of Link, much like the first game, doesn't give you many clues as to where to go. Although most of the dungeons are easy enough to find, they're incredibly difficult to get to. As you attempt to make your way through the overworld, enemy after enemy will appear. When you touch one, you're taken to a side-scrolling area where all you can do is walk, jump, and stab with your sword. Attacking enemies is extremely hard, and so is avoiding their attacks, and these enemies do massive damage. To make everything even harder for players, every time you lose all 3 of your lives, which is incredibly easy to do, you're taken all the way back to the Northern Palace, or whatever it's called, in the center of the map. That means you have to go all the way back to the dungeon you died in, which often costs you a life. I've never even managed to get to the 3rd palace in this game. I was going to just toughen up and try to beat the game, but then I watched a speedrun of it and saw all the horrors that awaited me. And then I thought, you know what, this game isn't that fun anyway. Well, that concludes my top 5 hardest Legend of Zelda games video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, feel free to leave a like and or subscribe for more videos like this.